All right, hello everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Wealth Preservation Podcast. I'm your co-host, Josh Saunders, and always I'm joined by Mark Seither. Mark, how's it going today?
Good. I am feeling great and very excited for today's episode. We've got Polygon Market with Allison Sugahara and Derek Thomas, the 1-2 punch husband-wife combo.
Yes.
Thanks for having us. This is great.
Yeah, we're excited. Just for our listeners, Mark and I, we love talking marketing. It's really marketing is this really misunderstood or hard to understand concept because it really encompasses so many different things. And so we're excited to dive into this and get Allison and Derek's take on what they do for their clients and how they do it. And hopefully everybody walks away with some good information today. So let's kick this off.
I would describe my marketing level as I understand it, I just don't get it. So I love talking to people who understand it and get it.
Hopefully we can clear things up a little bit.
Yes. So first, let's just introduce you guys. So Allison, go ahead and give us a little brief two-minute intro of you and how you got or where Polygon Market is out of.
Oh, sure. Hi, I'm Allison Sugahara. Thank you so much for having me, you guys. It's really fun to be here. I love talking about this stuff. I love just having good conversations with good people too. But we're based out of the Bay Area, San Jose, so South Bay Area, and we are what would you call it, Derek? Like a creative agency, a brand marketing agency. I mean, we kind of run the gamut of a lot of different things. We do logo design, brand building, brand strategy, social media marketing, and also websites.
Awesome. And Derek, give us a quick snapshot of you and why you decided to do the risky thing of quitting your job and joining Allison.
Man, where do I even start? But first off, thanks for having us. I'm a huge podcast guy. I listen to probably 5 to 10 a week, and these are like the 2-hour long ones. So I love podcasts, and I had one of my own for a little while. So this is always fun. I love meeting new people, and Mark, we go back a few years. So thanks for having us. Yes, we are Polygon Market. We're a husband and wife run creative agency here in the Bay Area. And yeah, I mean, basically we just try and help businesses kind of find their voice and create assets that help speak directly to their targeted audience. So it's like, basically like, who do you want to speak to and how do we build a voice, a tone, something around that can kind of garner more fans and help your existing fans like connect with you even more. So we like to say that we're storytellers. Allison's, she can go into that later down the road, but basically what we think of as marketing is creating that story and helping tell that story. So that's a lot of what we do is kind of, the building blocks of and the foundation of building that story that helps your business grow.
Yeah, that's awesome. So as always on the Wealth Preservation Podcast, we kind of, episode 1 is always with our guests is we really do that dive in of like, hey, how did you start and what made you become Polygon Market? Like so we'll kind of get into all that and hopefully, pull out some neat nuggets. And episode 2 is always, we go into really the how, right? The what and the how and what you guys do. And so we're going to get all kinds of we'll get nerdy on marketing after that. So let's kind of take that step back. And, for Derek, did 8-year-old Derek want to own a marketing agency? Is that what you were like, when you were in second grade and you were doing the, bring your favorite job to work day there? If you brought your marketing agency ads in, you're like, I want to sell Marlboro cigarettes.
There definitely wasn't anything like that. I think like me being a young entrepreneur, like the one thing I can kind of remember is I grew up on a golf course when I was really young, like from like 4 till about 9. And the only entrepreneurial thing that I really did was I set up a lemonade stand in my backyard, which was right next to like the 7th tee box. And so that was definitely like something that I did, selling like quarter lemonades, 50-cent lemonades, whatever. But when it comes to like, me thinking I would be an agency co-founder with my wife, never in a million years. Like we used to go out to dinner with Allison because Allison's always been the entrepreneur. I'll let her answer that question. But for me, I always just thought like the grind of work was just part of life, and people would come home and be unhappy. And that was just like kind of what life was supposed to be like. So I was kind of just putting up with it. But to answer your question, no, I never thought I would be an entrepreneur.
Like life is just stable misery.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I expected, That really is what I thought it was.
Well, it does seem like so. Allison was, so you caught on a little bit early. You're a little bit more of the entrepreneur, So tell us a little bit about was 8-year-old Allison setting up not lemonade stands but lemonade franchises and trying to get other people to own their lemonade stands, or where was your entrepreneurial spirit birthed from?
8-year-old Allison had a jewelry shop on the side. I was making jewelry and selling it to my mom's friends. I was the owner or editor of my own magazine, cutting out little magazines and then making my own. I was making like Barbie dresses and sewing my own Barbie dresses. So I don't think that I ever knew that I was going to be owning a marketing agency, but my mom must have caught on that, okay, this girl's probably going to do something by herself on her own. Every journal I had as a kid that had something to do with career was I will own my own fashion line, or I will own my own studio. And it's wild to look back at my, journals from childhood that actually say, I'm going to own my own something.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't think I put the pieces together until I got older, but it was always there.
So we have one who was born and one who was made. That's basically what I picked up there.
Yeah.
Well, was there anyone? Was there anyone that I guess when you were younger that you looked up to, or maybe a family member that was like, hey, I saw how so and so did their career, and I was just like, man, that's so much better than working 9 to 5.
I think younger, I was mostly an artist. So it was really following my passions around creation. It was always I want to create something. And by nature, I ended up kind of becoming a pseudo entrepreneur, because I would film, my mom had an event with her teacher. So I would film that and edit it and do all of that. Or she'd have something going on and solicit me to take photos. And so I was kind of this mini entrepreneur in the making without really knowing what I was doing at all. And I think it was because I was following my creativity, not really necessarily seeing that somebody else was also doing it, but just more oh, I could do that. I could do that for somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe my inspiration was in every artist that I loved growing up, or every actress, actor, painter, designer, videographer, movie making. I would see movies and be I would analyze the way that it was filmed, not just watching the movie. I would tell my dad, look at the way that that's broken down. He's like, you're weird, and, and I think that just picking up the pieces, I got more inspired by the artists around me and the creators around me that were doing things.
Yeah. So, and this is for Derek. How did it kind of come about when you're I'm kind of destined for this life of misery. I'm going to 9 to 5 or 6 to 2 or whatever it is. And when did that light bulb come on, or did it take a while, or why did you kind of think you were kind of destined for that? What kind of created that? Because I think most of us have had jobs and been where you're at, so we get it.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's interesting. I grew up thinking I was going to be a professional baseball player. That's what I wanted. I played in college. It was my life until I was probably 22 years old, right? It was 6 days a week, 10 months out of the year, you are playing, and you're very, very structured, that sort of thing. So in college, I didn't know what the hell I wanted to do, you know, and full disclosure, I didn't even graduate. I'm a full on college dropout. It just wasn't for me. I was there to play baseball. That's what it was. And going back, I wish I would have focused a little bit more, but going through kind of the stages of learning what I wanted in life, my family was always based around security, making sure it was a lot of what thing could, they were always chasing the next thing, get a new car, and then need a promotion to afford that car, and get a new house, and then upgrade. And as I started in my own career, I kept getting promotions. I started off in retail, and within a year I was managing my own store. And then I realized that was not where I wanted to be. And then I got a job in construction, basically being the gopher, hey, go grab these things. I quickly rose into sales, and Mark knows a little bit about I quickly grew up the ranks and making more and more money. And I just remember, to circle back to your question, it never made me any happier. I'd get that promotion, I'd get that bigger paycheck, I'd get that commission, that bonus, whatever it was. And it never made me any happier. If anything, it made things worse. Right. Yeah. And I would come home, and Allison had already started Polygon at this point. And, she wasn't making a ton of money or anything like that, but she was always happy. She was always smiling, and she always was excited about what was coming up. And it took me a long time, but I realized that like she was happy because she was doing something that she loved, and she got to build it her way.
Right.
And so like through the 9 years of my construction career and like, making more money than I ever thought I would, making more money than my parents ever did, I kept thinking like, when is that moment going to happen where I'm happy, and never did. And so seeing Allison, and we actually had a discussion, it was right after we got married too. She was like, I was like, man, I'm unhappy. She's like, well, why don't we find something for you? And I was like, why don't we just do this thing together? Like your business is taking off. I have some sales skills. I have some project management skills. Like, let's combine forces and like see what we can do. And the rest is history.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's such a, one of our previous guests, it stuck in my head how he put it. He was just like, you get that promotion and you're 10% more pay and 50% more miserable.
Yeah.
And it's, it's funny how you keep chasing that. And like you said, like, oh, you get the nice car and then you try and get a job that'll afford that nice car. Right?
Yeah.
Instead of the other way around.
Yeah, it's that same. It was Len Kaoka. He said that he was an engineer, graduated from Washington with a master's degree in engineering, had done all the wickets, right? He'd done everything he was supposed to do. And he's like, I'm sitting at my desk writing a spreadsheet, and he's like, I'm gonna have to be here for 40 years and then retire. That sounds miserable to me. He's like, I gotta figure something else out. I can't. And he had done like you, Derek, he had done all of it, right? He had gotten the jobs, the promotion, and the best education, and everything. And he was like, I'm miserable.
Yeah, and we're supposed to we're supposed to work our butts off for 40 plus years to be able to retire when we're old and can't move, and when everything is moved on. Like, I want to enjoy now. I want to enjoy the next 30 years because this is the best time of our lives.
Yeah.
So that it was like, how can we do that together? And the best thing about working with your wife is that we have the same goal in mind. We both want the same thing. And so we're very focused on like what we want. Like the ideas come and go and they change and we pivot, but like the end goal is always the same.
Yeah. So let's real quick. Let's talk about that security thing, right? Because that's always I think the two clashing ideas of I need security or do I not need it? And how have you guys kind of battled through that? And what did that kind of mean to you, Allison? And this is might be kind of a sexist statement, but usually women are a little bit more want security, right? That's more of an innate thing and who they are. But how have you kind of battled that? How'd that come around and go for it, right? And not to worry about that security as much.
It was interesting because I've always had an interesting relationship with money in general, where I felt like I always wanted to do what I wanted to do because, like I said, I'm more of that artist mentality, that creator mentality. And so in my mind, I knew that I could make money, but I also thought that I was destined to be poor because I'm doing this thing that I love, but like, I don't know what the key ingredient is or the thing to do to like scale. I didn't know anything back then. I don't know what I know now. And that was always something interesting too. But at the same time, I didn't care so much about security as long as I had what I needed in order to do whatever the fuck I wanted, really. Like as long as I had the basics so I could continue to have creative freedom, I did not care. But at the same time, it caused a lot of strain in so many ways because I was constantly searching for the next job. And that was also kind of a battle between me and Derek because he's out there kind of making more of the money. And he'd come home and just see that, like, I'm content not making so much money. And there were times where, like, I got recruited and turned down like a bigger salary. And he's like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, why would you ever do that? And I'm like, because whatever the job is sounds awful. Like, I know myself. If I don't care how, and I figured that out early. I did like my first big girl job for like 9 months or something like that. And I hated it so much that the money didn't matter anymore. Like, I figured it out so quick. I was like, I'll wait tables for the rest of my life if it means I can just do art, really. Yeah. And I think in that way, I was always going to be like that, but it has been hard because I have so many big ambitions that I know kind of require money in order to, like, the way that I want to serve moving forward with Polygon and help other people find more opportunities. Some of that requires capital,
Sure.
And so
absolutely,
kind of figuring out along the way how to get to that point. But at the beginning, I mean, I don't think I was ever going to care about money, but it does get kind of hard at the same time. So I've had a complicated relationship with money.
It does get hard when you're at Chipotle and you see that guac and you're like, I can't afford that. Nope. But I mean, you bring up an interesting point too with the whole time aspect, where typically people who grind their ass off and are just working all the time, they complain about like not having time, and then once that time's gone, you can't get it back. You can always make another dollar, but really, someone who has a lot of time, that's a wealthy person.
True.
So I mean, that's that's just, you figured it out early. So, and Derek, grinded his ass off for 9 years at a construction company.
And it's weird because at the time I didn't feel, I was like, it's like we both felt like something was missing, I was like, money's missing, but really like I had the time. And then he was like, I don't have any time, but I have money. And yeah, kind of interesting how that works.
There you go. So when did you shift to because you said you'd been recruited to some jobs and you're kind of doing side pieces. When did you decide like, hey, it's Polygon market time? Like I'm launching this thing and this is this is gonna be my baby.
Yeah, I was kind of forced into it. I mean, like I said, I probably was always going to be an entrepreneur, but I didn't. It's when you're a kid, I feel like you have all of this innocence and spirit, and then you don't realize that all the things that you love and want as a kid can really become or manifest into things that you really should be doing moving forward, because that's what you're passionate about, like originally. And I always thought that I wanted to maybe find a startup or something. Like after going through that, my first big girl job situation, I was like, no, now I want to work with a startup so that I can like be in this world where I get to be creative and wear multiple hats. I really thrive in environments where I'm wearing multiple hats. And I met a guy at a bar, who just a friend, like a friend of a friend. And he had his own graphics company where he did like a lot of race car, clients where they do wraps and big stickers, like numbers and that kind of stuff. Also promotional graphics and stickers and t-shirts. So when we met, he was like, "Oh, you're a designer. Let's partner up." And so we kind of partnered, and that was my first taste of being an entrepreneur. But he also had an electric bike company, and that was starting to take off. So I started getting into branding. I just learned about how to start a brand from the actual digital assets like a logo to then maneuvering into more of the marketing piece. And I realized, okay, I want to be doing this. And at the point that it just, the ceiling kind of, there was a glass ceiling over my head at the startup, he was like, why don't you revisit this graphics company idea? You have like this baseline of clients. What do you think? And I was like, no, fuck that. I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that by myself. Like, I'd rather ride the coattails of someone else. He was like, well, we'd be your first client. So, and then everybody else was like, you should do it. And then, so I was kind of like forced into it, although I could have done it by myself all along, So I didn't realize it at the time. It's always weird when people ask me how it started, because I was very hesitant and resistant to actually take the leap by myself. And once I did it, it was like, this makes so much sense.
Yeah.
And then I shifted it and molded it to whatever I wanted.
And it is really interesting for Derek on that one is, you're talking about capital and you need capital to do things. And we've heard so many failure stories of entrepreneurs that are like, I quit my job and, I said, screw you, boss, and went for it. And now I'm waiting tables again. Right. I mean, we always encourage entrepreneurs, or people that I know are like, I'm thinking about starting this. I'm like, well, don't quit your job. Like, test it, vet it, you'll know.
It's not an insult like, well, don't quit your day job, but it's just like, no, like really force yourself to streamline your process to where you are maxed out on your time, and then you can quit your job.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what I did, actually. I worked at 2 restaurants, just like waiting tables on the side. So in between running a business or trying to get it off the ground, I'm like doing these like t-shirt deliveries, running across town, calling work. Like, I'm going to be like, 30 minutes late, I'll be there. And then but then that also became like a platform for me. I started networking while I was actually serving tables.
Right.
Which is funny to think, like some of your former employees or coworkers or bosses were probably like, that Allison, so lazy. He's always late.
Oh no, they
preoccupied.
No, they really liked it. They were like, you can make t-shirts. What can you do for us? Like so many of those places that I worked were like, can you make our website? Can you do this? So it really became a place for me to, like, a testing ground for everything. And it kind of became the place where I did all my sales.
Yeah. So, because Derek, you shifted, from a structured job. When you, Allison, it sounds like you had quite a bit of people who were cheering you on, right?
Yeah.
And just like, go you. Derek, did you find the same thing when you stepped away from your job that paid a lot of money? Or were there people that were just like, Derek, no, come on, like, let's go to therapy, something.
Oh, God.
The disappointed dad look of,
yeah.
Derek.
Well, without throwing anybody under the bus, like, there was definitely a lot of, like, worry from friends and family. Like, what are you doing? You have this great thing. My mom was always like, you're going to be running that company in 5 years. Like, why would you ever leave?
You're talking about the old job that you were at.
My old job, thank you.
Yeah.
So when I made the decision to leave, it was tough, and not everyone was on our side, and not everyone really understood why. Yeah, I mean, it was really hard, but to go back to what you were saying earlier about, like, test out your side hustle, make it a side hustle, and then when you're making more than your original salary, maybe it's time, or when you 2x it or whatever. I can't do that kind of stuff. I don't know why. Like, I need to have laser focus on what I'm doing. Otherwise, they're both going to be half-assed, right? Sure. So I either got to, like, stick with what I'm doing, which is working, or I got to, like, stop that and do this and put 100% in. Like,
yeah.
I'm not one. Allison knows this. Like, when, like, 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock hits, I'm not really good at working. I'm more of, like, an early bird. I'll get my work done at 7. I'll be done at 5 or 6, and then I can start over the next day. But, like, I can't even imagine going 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. and then being like, I'm going to put another 4 hours into this side hustle. Like, it's just not me. And so our whole thing was, okay, we had just gotten married in August of 2017. I had a couple more months. We finally got Allison on our, like, health plan. So, like, Allison was able to go, and, like, we got all of our blood work done. We got all the major stuff that needed to get done. And then we made the decision, like, we were having our honeymoon in Kauai right after Thanksgiving 2017. So the end of October came, and Allison and I were like, let's do this, right? Like, let's go for it. So I gave my company, like, 3 weeks notice. I was like, hey, Thanksgiving break's coming up. The day before Thanksgiving is going to be my last day. And then Allison and I are going to go hog wild on this Polygon thing. So we spent our honeymoon in Kauai basically, like, drinking Mai Tais by the pool, by the beach, going on hikes, and, like, dreaming of what Polygon could be. Yeah. And so it was actually, like, this perfect thing. And to answer your question about stability and security, I had saved up probably roughly, like, 18 months worth of, like, that was my nut that I had. Right? Sure. Like, I knew, and we actually didn't take 1 cent from it our first year in Polygon. Like, we were just using what I had left over and, like, building up the business account. Nice. And so that provided the security that I thought that we needed. Looking back, we probably spent more than we should have. Like, we were like, ooh, we got this, like, big thing to fall back on. Like, let's have fun here. But it allowed us to have some, like, to not be panicking in month 2. Right. Because we didn't hit the ground running. It's like, oh man, we got this killer business. Like, no, it took a while to really get the thing rolling and have, like, clients that were sustainable and that sort of thing. So there was a lot more planning than we maybe put off to some people that we know. Yeah. But there was a lot of things that went in strategically to it.
Yeah. On the show, we call that the 5-year overnight success.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
That's what, that's usually what everybody thinks, like, oh man, they started 2 weeks ago and now they're millionaires. You're like, no, it's been a long time coming. It was a lot of work to get to that.
Yeah. And it was kind of,
there's always those tasks too, where you're just like, oh, that needs to get done. Then you both kind of look at each other just like, well, I really don't want to do it. This is the ugly side of the business. Yeah. Flip a coin.
Mm-hmm.
Seriously. Yeah. It was interesting though, because I had already been running business about 3 or 4 years prior to Derek hopping on board. I think 4 years. And so right when he did hop on board, it was very timely. It was like all of a sudden connections that I had spent years building, he was able to kind of like, all right, like, and then I didn't have to worry about sales. Like I actually had somebody who was on top of sales, but it was
Sure.
kind of serendipitous in that way too. It was almost like, yep, you quit. So like that was the right thing to do. And the world was like, here you go. All the work that you did before, it wasn't there like when he was working, but now that he's not, like, here you go.
So in that first year, I mean, it sounds like your guys' first year wasn't the you guys weren't on beans and rice, but
No.
Was there like is there a
Mark,
stretch
they
during
got
that?
they got to eat these shrimp ramen noodles. They really upgraded
Woo!
it. Yeah, the shrimp ramen noodles.
But did you guys have like a stretch where you guys were kind of just looking at it and being like, man, is this gonna work? Is this not gonna work? Should we just say our apologies to our old bosses and be like, coming back?
Allison, if you let me, I'll start this one. So like, and she can attest to this. Because I wasn't an entrepreneur, I was in panic mode all the time. Like, all the time. Like that's just how it was. Like and also because I have this like busybody brain, and so there would be days because we're in our first year and like we're building up a client base. There would be days where we didn't have a whole lot going on, and we could have sat there and rolled calls or whatever that may have been. But there was times where we just like would sit and brainstorm or sit and just kind of like be like, where do we take this thing? And because I wasn't busy, I would spin out. I would completely spin out. And Allison was always cool as a cucumber and being like, no, we got plenty of stuff. It's all coming. We got things in the pipeline, whatever it was. But like, there was definitely this process of about a year, maybe 18 months where I had to like get into like, we are the business owners and we control this. So It's not so much about like this panic that can set in very easily. So it was definitely a learning process for me, kind of getting into that mindset.
Yeah.
You've also now experienced like the seasons of being busy, because it's like when it's not busy, like fucking enjoy it, because it's it's like I'll text friends like, I have nothing going, I'm napping today, like because I know like there's shit that I could catch up on, but it's gonna get busy again in like 3 days. So and so we'd have these cycles, and I'm like, just chill. Or like we would have an idea and run with it, and immediately like I know, because I've had to pivot so many times, I'm like, this isn't gonna work, let's stop. And you for the longest time were like, can we ever finish anything or follow through on anything? And I'm like, welcome to the world of being an entrepreneur. We're not going to finish anything. It's an ongoing journey. It's not that you're not finishing or you're quitting. It's just that the path changed and you just keep following the path. Like that's just how it goes.
Yeah.
Yep. There was a lot of that.
Yeah. So
and sometimes you end up at Baskin Robbins at 10 a.m. You're like, hey, it's one of those kind of days.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So let's kind of take a step back. For you, Allison, and for you, Derek, who wants to answer it first is, either of you go to, you kind of said you went to college, Derek, but kind of what was your major, and did that help or hurt the entrepreneurial journey, or kind of how did that play into the whole thing?
I was a business administration major. Like again, college was a place for me to play baseball, party my ass off. That's what it was, unfortunately. And I went to a very small school, like the only school that would give me a scholarship. And it was in Southern California. Allison went to San Diego State, which is like the fun school, right? Like this is where everything's going on. And so
we had a connection.
Yeah. And so I used my college to basically, build some friendships, play as high quality sports as I could, and party with Allison at San Diego State. So like, and when I say that there was like nothing picked up, it's not entirely true. There were a few things that I did enjoy and learn about. There were some financial things that were very important, but from a very high level, I got probably less than 50% of what was given out there in the school side. But Allison and I have talked about this many times. I have a brain that's like when I was in high school, I was in like those classes where like, oh, you get to go and take your tests here and get extra time, or like that's who I was. I wasn't the smart kid in school. I was far from it. And I realized very early on that like this is not how I learn. You give me a book and give me a test after it, I'll fail it every single time. But if you gave me something and said like, "Hey, build this," like and put your hands on it, I'll build the best possible thing there is. It's just
Good.
like the school system doesn't fit my brain very well, and so I had to learn that and figure out other ways to like pick things up.
Yeah.
But I mean, we've heard that on this show in the past too, because I mean, we have one guy in particular who's a night manager at Denny's and dropped out of college, and now he runs like the 15th largest RV park in the country, right? And he was just like, he's like, I read and I learned a ton, but you handed me a textbook, and I was like, what is this?
Right.
Like, that's not
I'm
me.
still
he was smart enough. He got the wrestlers at Stanford to party at his house, and they would do his homework for him. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Smart.
Talk about an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Absolutely.
But how about you?
Maybe not an ethical one, but
kind of how did you go to college? Did it kind of shape any of that, or was it good or bad? Or
Yeah, it was interesting because I'm a teacher's daughter, but I was definitely an average student because, like I said before, like I was so much more into like art class or recess or, like I was just not super into book studies. So I went the community college route because I didn't get into San Diego State right off the bat. And I honestly, I couldn't really afford to go to college anyway. So I actually waited tables at the same place that I picked up, and was waiting tables when I started my business too. So I've been at both places for so long. I waited tables while going through community college so that I could help pay my way. And then I applied for San Diego State and I got in. And I loved it there. I mean, I was there to party too. That was kind of like my main goal, even though I'm paying for part of my college. So absurd. But the last year of college, which was 2010, I was a fifth year senior. It was really interesting because the recession had just happened, or the big short, and
yeah,
there were really no jobs available. But at the same time, I was a communications major, like a media studies and communications major. But the weirdest part about that is that I was in an impacted major. So they were furloughing days. Like, we're paying more money to be in school at this point, yet they're taking away part of our curriculum. And then I progressed into this major and I got called into the office and they're like, you're supposed to graduate and you're not technically in this major. We have to make up a major for you. So they took it, like, it all seemed like bullshit to me. I was like, wow, this is all fake. Like, this is ridiculous. And I don't feel like I've learned anything at all. Until my last year. Until my last year is finally when I got to take the classes that I actually cared about. And I thought that was so strange. So when I graduated, I went back to community college immediately and started taking graphic design classes because
Sure.
I was just interested in something else and I didn't feel like I knew enough. I knew that I was going to have to get out into the world and just experience it for myself in order to figure out my way.
Yeah.
So I was never like into internships or anything like that. And I really appreciate the education I had. I also feel good that I was able to, contribute towards that. But at the same time, it wasn't what I envisioned or thought. But it,
Mhm.
Yeah.
I do think it helped to some degree. It's just
So I mean,
interesting.
and this was not, this definitely wasn't the direction planned, but I mean, you both have, you both have kind of an interesting take on education, right? So Derek, you're sitting there saying, hey, the education system isn't designed for me. I don't learn that way, so I had to find a different way. And then Allison, you're saying, hey, I got to the very end and was like, well, I guess I got to go back to community college to actually learn something now, right? So I guess what would your insight or advice to anyone in high school now to like really critically think about post high school futures?
I would say
I would say like don't.
Oh my
don't,
God.
Jinx twice. There you go. My voice would be all over that.
I mean, honestly, like if I could go back, I feel like there's this thing right now where people think that college is just like the next step of the progression. And for many people, it should be.
Yeah.
But I think the idea that it has to be should be kind of removed from, the ether. It's like if you want to go and like if there's something specific that if you want to be an accountant, if you want to do something like that, like yes, you need to do this. Yeah. But I think there's a lot of people that get out of college and are like they were thinking that there was going to be some secret sauce to like I'm going to get out, I'm going to get this great job, and it's not really the reality anymore. So Alice and I talk about this all the time. It's like just try new stuff all the time. right?
Yeah.
Like go learn, go live abroad for 6 months. Like go just like jump into something that you're unsure about and see what you find, because you'll figure out what you like and dislike pretty quickly, rather than like delaying it another 4 or 5 years and coming out being in the same position you were as an 18-year-old.
Right.
So like, if you think college is for you, like go for it. But if you're unsure, like go wait tables, go like start a band and like try something weird, do something, because you don't realize it, but all of a sudden you're 35, it's like you got to cherish those young years to like do something. And we're still young, don't get me wrong, but like cherish that time to like do some stuff and experiment. I mean, I kind of sound like Gary Vee here, but it's kind of like the idea, right? Just go try stuff and figure out what you like and don't like.
Yeah.
That one probably hurt Josh a little bit more than it hurt me. Yeah, Josh, all of a sudden you're like 35.
You're
Gosh,
old.
F that.
Your life basically over at that age.
Basically what I mean is like, when you're 21, you feel like you're the king of the crop, right? But then you realize, like, especially if you're doing a job that you don't like 30 comes up quick. And now, I turned 34 on Monday. Like all this stuff just like blows by. And if you aren't taking control of your own life, like, you could wake up 50 with the next day, So it's like just try stuff and figure out new things.
College does seem to be that it's almost like the steady misery, right? That the career job is, right? It's just the next thing where you're like, I'm just gonna grind through college now.
Right.
Yeah. Or like, this is what I think it should be. And I think that's an interesting point, Derek, is that I think so. One of the first times I blew up on TikTok, it was really interesting because I was getting young kids DMing me and saying, what did you major in? I really want to do what you do. Like, what did you major in? And they're all to understand that like 17-year-olds and 18-year-olds are freaking the fuck out about what they need to major in was so weird to me. I was like, they're like, what do I do? What did you do? What do I do? And I was like, do whatever the fuck you want. What do you like to do? Do that. Like, go on YouTube. Like, you have so many resources at your fingertips. Are you serious? Like, if you want to learn how to design, like, you could do that today for free. Like, now. You could learn how to play piano now. And I think that to echo Derek's point about the timeline situation, that's where I think you meant 35. When you're 35 or 30 and you've been on this road, not just from a job perspective, you go down the road and you get married or you have kids, you don't realize that it's all this time that you had before when you weren't really sure, that you have freedom, like actual freedom to just go out and do. You have no ties or responsibilities to anything. You could just leave the country if you wanted to. But when you have a house and a mortgage, you can't just pick up and leave if you want, like there's different things about that the beginning stages of figuring out what you want to do that I feel like we need to all be more forgiving on, because that's the area, or that's the time frame where you actually have the most freedom to be able to figure that out. And there's no pressure. Like, who says you have to have the same career for however many years,
Absolutely.
Well, Josh, we just had a breakthrough moment where we have the first TikTok influencer on our podcast.
That's right.
I don't think we've ever had a TikToker on our podcast. We've joked about TikTok, but I don't think we've had a TikToker.
Mark and I can neither sing nor dance, so it's kind of not our.
Neither can I.
The first stereotype of TikTok getting thrown.
No,
out.
I know, absolutely.
I have a brother 10 years younger than me, and he did introduce me to Boston Be a Man on TikTok, and that dude, I watched probably 30 minutes of his video.
There's so much on there. It's actually like, the prop up TikTok. Like I get a lot of my current events from TikTok. Like there's so much on there. And it started off as an educational platform, and it's kind of still along that path where you can learn to do a lot of stuff on there. So, if you aren't on there, I recommend giving it a shot. It's a little bit addicting. Be careful with it, but there's a lot. If you're bored with Instagram, get on TikTok.
Hop on the TikTok train, baby.
We love it. So let's kind of go back to the launching Polygon and kind of, let's talk about how that, Allison, you had kind of, if I'm not wrong, you had already kind of had it going, right? You had Polygon going before Derek, fully got on board. But what was that like that first year of the two of you, right? When he didn't have a job and you're like both sitting at the desk at day one and you're like, all right, here we go. What do you do? What do I do? Kind of, what was that like?
That was hard, actually, because we didn't have defined roles yet. And I am didn't realize how much of a control freak I am in certain situations, but especially with something that I have created and that I'm very particular about the way that I talk to people. I mean, he had to like CC me on every freaking email because I needed to know the tone of voice that he was using. I needed to know what he was saying. And for, I don't know, like Derek can probably speak to this, but the first year, I mean, probably the first year, you felt like, what am I doing? Like, I'm just taking orders from, because I'm like, no, like I'd come in, I'm like watching over you and every move that you're making. So that transition part was hard because I think for Derek coming out of, and I don't want to speak for you, but coming out of a situation where you're almost like your own mini entrepreneur too, because you're in sales and you're having to like manage all these accounts by yourself. You come from a place where you're top dog, top salesman, and you come into my world and I know everything about what I do because I live and breathe it all the time for several years, you know. It's like that was a hard transition. And for me to have to learn how to delegate and like also teach somebody about our industry, that was really difficult. And then roles, like from all different
like,
standpoints.
The day when you're like, okay, so I'm going to work, and Derek, I'm going to need you to clean the bathroom and get me a cup of coffee, and we'll start there.
I like strawberry cream cheese.
Yeah.
It was really
for anyone
interesting.
who's listening, if you're watching, you could see how Derek was shaking his head immediately when she started talking about that. So, Derek, what was that kind of like for you, where you're just totally fish out of water?
Well, to give you a little context as to like what I was doing before, so I never realized this until like probably like 6 or 7 years into what I was doing beforehand. Was, you know, I was a consultant at a construction company, and basically my job was I would go to a job site, build a scope of work, price it out, you know, and that's like I would be pricing jobs for 20 crew members, all the equipment, all the materials, the hours. I mean, I built these jobs from the ground up. I was fully in charge of like all the margins we'd be making, payment plans. I'd manage the project. I'd sell the project, you know, soup to nuts, right? And I was at the certain point where it's like I'm running my own business right now. You know, it's basically like I'm Derek Thomas Construction, and I would have like my company that I was working for called Black Diamond Paving. They would be like my subcontractor. Like that's kind of how I started to spin it. And so when I came and joined Polygon Market, and I started like doing my sales emails and sales calls, and Allison would be like, "That's not how we do this here." And that's not, I was like, "I've been doing this for years now. Like you got to give me some leeway here." So there was definitely some battling that was happening a little bit, but it was all for the better. It was more or less just like I needed to figure out the Polygon tone of voice. We're a branding agency, you know, so it's like if we're not speaking the same between her, myself, vendors, where's that cohesion, right? So we had to learn that side of it, and it took. I mean, I don't think it took a year. I think it took a few months, but it was definitely frustrating. We had our moments where, you know, like, what the hell am I doing here? You know, why don't you just do the damn thing? Like all that kind of stuff. But, you know, once we got through that, and once you run through a few projects and like everything goes great, the trust starts to like come through. Cause, you know, I speak to this with like a bunch of my friends because we have friends that go back all the way to high school, and, you know, your perception of them typically is the same as what it was before. Right. And so Allison, she'd seen me like on calls and stuff like that, but she's never really seen me like in the work world, like in my office doing that kind of thing. Not that she had a weird perception of me. She had full faith in me, but like you have to be able to see it sometimes before you can fully like buy in and trust it. And so there was just a period where we had to work through some of those things, but you know, it all was for the better, and you know, we were able to figure things out.
Yeah. I didn't doubt your sales skills at all.
No, it wasn't so much doubt.
Like, it was just more like you can't be telling people that we do this when we don't do this, you know?
There was
like,
definitely a part of that too.
That's the sales guy, though. That's the,
yeah.
Of course we can
exactly.
Do it.
Yeah. Exactly. I'm like,
hey,
no,
we do marketing,
do
branding, and plumbing.
Yeah.
Especially when I'm just trying to bring in more revenue.
Yeah.
Right.
Totally. And I'm like, stop doing that. Who's going to do that? I have to do that. I don't want to do that.
So, because I want to, before we wrap up this episode, also kind of get how Polygon is operating now and kind of the transformation you guys have undergone. Because next episode, we're going to get into some actual practical things that people can go apply themselves, which I'm really excited about. But, as far as your business model today, was there anything, Allison, you talked about like always going different directions. Was there anything that you guys pursued for a long time and you're like, we just have to cut this off. This is not working. And how'd you guys make that decision?
A lot of times, a lot of things. It's kind of funny because we've had different, like there's certain, I'm sure you understand, like there's just certain times where you get to a point you've leveled up and then you're doing something and it just doesn't work anymore. The way that your system is like based on the amount of growth you've had just doesn't line up. And there's so many instances where that's happened, even in terms of we don't have the bandwidth to offer, social media management anymore. Like we tried it out and I was the one doing everything. And I'm like, this isn't sustainable. So then we tried interns and then it's like, I don't have the time to teach them. So we dropped that service. And then later we came back and we partnered with another agency. And so and then it worked for the time being and then it didn't work out again. And now we're at a point where we're building an in-house team again. So like we've gone through the same cycles, like, but all completely different stages. I would say the biggest one for me that stands out was our payment structure, because the way that we invoiced people, and I'm getting super transparent here, was kind of like a freelancer, because that's how I started off. I started off freelancing. And so I would do 50% upfront and 50% upon delivery. Well, when you have a big project going on, like ongoing, not only are you adding to the scope of work there, but like you realize that, oh my God, I've been working for months and I don't get to get paid until this is done. Like, what a stupid way to structure the payment for our business. But we didn't know that until we got to a point where we had bigger.
Well, there would be moments where we were like, we need to finish this because we have 5 projects going. They've all been on pause and they owe us $70,000.
Right.
And it was like our vendors are complaining, we're complaining, we're supposed to have all this money coming in, but because the client isn't ready to proceed, we're on the hook. Right. And so there was moments like that where we're just like, okay, what do we do? And that's when we started putting in like monthly payments, and it also incentivized the clients. Like, if you want to go on delay, that's fine, but you're paying us still. And so you're incentivized to get your shit done so we can finish. Right. Yeah. And so, but it took us probably 2 years to implement that. Like, we were just like, oh man, like, I guess we're just bad at what we do. But it was like, no, like anybody who's worked on a project where there's a lot of work on both our end and the client end, the client's always the slow one. Almost always, right? It's like,
yes.
Whether they have a million other things going on or they don't fully understand what they're expected to do, like, there's a million things that could be happening, but it's typically when something gets delayed, it's because they're not doing something that they're responsible for.
Yeah.
And so it brought it to our attention, and we're like, okay, we're changing it.
Yeah.
And so once that happened, we hadn't had that problem since.
And I just find that point so interesting, and going back to the kind of college thing, like that's not something you can learn in class.
No.
Like that's something that's super specific to like your industry, your market, and how you guys operate. And that's just something you have to figure out, right? There's no there's no textbook that says like, what you should do here is you could do 50% up front and a monthly retainer for delay. They're just not there. It's very specific. And so that's just, you have to learn that in the trenches. You learn it at another company or you have to just figure it out.
Right.
Totally. So many times of getting down to the last shrimp top ramen and being like, man, we're on chicken top ramen. We got to change our payment structure.
Well, and I think that's the problem with, like, we always, if you go on Instagram, you go on Facebook, you go anywhere, you find these like motivational speakers, right, who say they've all been there, done that. But they forget that like a lot of people are starting from square one, and like you got to make those mistakes. Otherwise, you're not going to go into it being like, well, this is how we do it because that's how everyone says. Like, no one ever talks about that stuff, and so you just kind of have to get into it. You got to make mistakes. You got to screw up, and just hope that you're present enough to be like, this is not the right way to do it moving forward, and we got to pivot that. And I think that's the one thing I'll give Allison and I a lot of credit for, is that like, because we were partners in both business and in life, like we're always looking at like, why is this not working? How can we change it? I mean, Allison wasn't joking when she said like, we're continually like, this works. Oh wait, now it doesn't. Now this works. Now it doesn't. Like, we're always making changes, which can be really frustrating at times, but it can also really help you get to that next level. So you just have to be in it to really see what you have to do.
Yeah.
And I was going to quickly echo off of your point, Josh, about kind of learning things that you wouldn't have learned in college that are, applicable now. And the other part of that is network and community, because we have the privilege of being able to work with so many different types of people and vendors, like because of the nature of the way our business is structured, because of the industry that we're in. So by just nature, we have all these conversations and we all want to learn how to work together. So you're learning how to work with a bunch of other people.
Sure.
And a lot of my skills I've learned from the way other people are doing stuff. And so that's another thing that you could just never get from sitting at a desk in a classroom, is that every single person that I'm connected to now that runs their own business completely structures their business differently,
Yeah.
or invoices differently. And that wealth of knowledge is so invaluable.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
And by the way, from the record, I really hope my engineers and doctors go to class. Like, please do. I really,
yeah. I don't want any entrepreneurial surgeons working on me later.
Yeah. I completely agree.
Just for the record, yeah.
This looks like a gallbladder. Let's remove it.
Yeah.
And also, because I guess, as you're figuring those things out and everything, like, how did you guys, I guess, balance the time both between like personal life and work life? Because it can get very, it can get very time consuming, as you both know. And you guys have friends, you've both mentioned. How did you maintain a business and friends?
Friends is the easy part, I would say. It's like being able to separate business partner and like wife or like spouse, because we are fully consumed in this all the time. Wake up, think about the business, go to bed thinking about the business, stresses, things are great, things are not, whatever. So like we had multiple times where we had to like make rules where like we would go out to dinner, we're not allowed to talk about business, or maybe we'd say something so we could write it off, but we would
for sure, absolutely.
But we would be like, okay, every 2 weeks we have to go on a date. Like different things like that, because we could easily just become business partners. Like it's just that's the truth of being in it every single day. And so we had to really like set aside time for us to be like, we're going to do a movie night tonight and we're not going to talk about business and we're not going to have our phones on. So there was a lot of that. I would say the friends part, especially in years past, that was never really a problem. We're pretty social people. We had people that were always organizing things. That was always a big priority of ours. But when you're in the thick of it, it's very easy to get, swallowed up by the business, especially when you're working side by side your wife.
Yeah.
Although I would say it is a little different now because our priorities, because they have shifted. And another thing I would say is boundaries, like just being able to set those boundaries accordingly, because not only do Derek and I need time together as a husband and wife, but I need alone time and he needs alone time too. And so there are so many non-negotiables about my self-care and the things that I want to do for myself and my own personal time. And he's very much similar. And then of course, setting some of those ground rules, but then now with our social life, kind of prioritizing ourselves first. That's been kind of an interesting lately, is like social life will always be there to some degree. And I think that also when you're an entrepreneur, like that's, there are elements of that. You don't always have to give up everything, but there are elements of that you do need to compromise when moving forward. Because I think back when I was first starting and I was like 25 years old, my social life was everything. And I probably, in hindsight, could have progressed a little bit farther had I been a little bit more serious about business. But, it ended up being how it is. It's just, when I think now to a lot of some of the freelancers we've worked with, it's really interesting seeing how much they prioritize their social life and still wonder why they're not at a place that they want to be in their career. And it's like, well, because you're drinking all the time. And don't get me wrong, I fucking love drinking. So like, it can't be number one. It has to be like number 3.
Sure. Yeah. Or 2 or 3. It's fine.
Yeah. I was gonna say, what would 2 be? Does that make me an alcoholic?
Probably.
Allison, you being the creative one, I'm sure when you guys go on like your date nights, you're the one who's like, "That's an unfortunate font." Wanna go somewhere else?
Mostly that I can identify font.
Yes.
Like I'm like, that's papyrus. That's this.
So let's kind of, as we're kind of wrapping this episode, where do you guys see, Polygon marketing in the next 5 years? I mean, kind of what's the landscape look like, and where do you guys got anything big in the hopper? Not you have to give anything away, but where are you guys kind of going and heading?
Man, it changes, but I would say right now, like we've really been embracing kind of the startup life a little bit, and some of our clients are going through like Series A funding stuff, and we have a couple new apps coming out. One we'll drop for you. It's called Solve, SOLVV. This new exciting like 15-minute social podcasting app. But like the idea is we partner up as marketing teams with these companies. And this one, our goal is to be as aligned as possible.
Sure.
If you're ever on TikTok, you see Allison. She has a very clear definition of who she is as like the sustainable social marketer or digital marketer. And so like when we find clients like that, we latch onto them because we really are aligned, and that's when the marketing really speaks. It's not like you're just selling a product. And so 5 years from now. Right now, we're basically working on a million different things, a million different angles. We love everything. But 5 years from now, we hope to be working with fewer clients on bigger scale projects.
Right.
We've been working through that more and more in the last 2 years, I would say. And we've really been honing in on kind of like our skill set as storytellers. And so I see us moving more in that direction, with these bigger clients that are looking to really make an impact in the market.
Gotcha.
And it's interesting because I have a completely, it's twofold for us both, because we do have different skill sets. What's been really interesting now for the business is I really, really need and want to step away from day-to-day operations. I find a lot of joy in being able to fulfill our clients' needs, but mostly to employ other creative vendors. So the fact that we've gotten to that point gets me really juiced, because I love providing opportunities for people that love doing the work that they do, but that hate sales, that can't line up the marketing, because we're good at that. And I agree with Derek. I want to be able to get the company to a place where we're doing less projects at a larger scale, and then be able to like almost create a referral network where we're outsourcing. Because what I really want to do is also serve on a grander scale. So maybe even by being a content creator, which is something is completely new. I was a creative director like last year, and now I'm moving into this community builder content creator. I would foresee Polygon then creating kind of a smaller, like something for the people that can't always afford or have the time to do stuff, and figuring out how I can create a program or something like that's also on my radar. So sustaining the business so that we can turn our attention to providing free content and resources, or lower price free content and resources for the masses.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you guys are aligned in some capacity, because if you had wildly different answers, then we'd be doing like episode 3, marriage therapy with entrepreneurs. Awesome. Well, yeah, we're gonna wrap up there. We'll do a quick speed round, and then I can't wait to hear about how you guys actually do the creative part of what you do. I think it's gonna be super awesome. But real quick, we'll take a pause for our editor to add in some speed round music. So speed round question number 1: if you could go back in time and give 8th grade you some advice, what would it be? We'll start with Allison.
Just get comfortable failing. Like get comfortable being uncomfortable, because that's all it is. It's just constant discomfort.
I love it.
Yeah, very true. Derek, what about you?
I would say probably get comfortable asking questions. Don't be so scared if you don't know the answer. I always thought it was kind of this, like, you should be, if someone asks you something you didn't know the answer, it was like, if you don't know, you're stupid. It's like, no, like just ask, and people who ask questions typically get the help or the response that they want. So just ask more questions.
I love it. So for either one of you or both of you, if you want, so if there's any aspiring entrepreneurs listening to this, what advice or warnings would you give them besides just go do it, follow your passion?
That's what I want to say. I'm like, I just want to encourage everyone to go for it, because I think honestly, fear is what holds everyone back, and then they live a life of mediocrity and they die at 90 or 80 and have all these regrets. It's like, I think the idea of Allison said, don't be or get comfortable with failure. It's like, it's okay if it fails. Like, you're not a lesser person. You know, you didn't work hard. It's not like you didn't work hard enough. You just didn't have the right idea. So try and get the fear out of it. Like, the fear that it's okay to fail. Chances are it's going to happen, but that's all right.
Yeah.
I would say work with what you've got, because I think that because of that fear, a lot of people are held back because they think that they need A, B, and C in order to proceed, when really we have so many resources and tools at our fingertips that you could do whatever you wanted now. If you don't have an e-commerce platform, open up an Instagram account and just have people DM you, you know, like there's so many loopholes for everything. Like, you can be the lemonade stand until you're not.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Agreed.
Okay. Shifting off of business. If you could take each other on the worst possible date, where are you taking? where are you taking each other?
The worst.
Allison, we'll start with you again.
Okay, worst possible date to take me or to take Derek?
To take
Derek.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, you are taking Derek on the worst date.
Okay, worst possible date. We're going to like a snake exhibit. And we're going at feeding time, and I'm gonna love every minute of it, but he's gonna hate every moment of it.
Will you have drinks there or no? Is that with cocktails or no cocktails?
I would need cocktails because snakes are like, I'm deathly afraid of snakes.
If it's the worst date ever, no cocktails, but I might do like some like high anxiety weed or something like that. Like, just get your heart racing, and then we'll go.
High anxiety weed and snakes. There we go.
That sounds awful. So yeah, I think you nailed it.
Yeah. Awesome. Stuck the landing. Perfect.
Yeah. All right,
Derek, what about you?
I mean, if we're going to go down that same road, I have to take Allison to like a butterfly exhibit or something like that, because she's deathly scared of, or like moths or something like that. Yeah, she can't stand any of that stuff.
I would be okay with an exhibit, but if you take me and moths are flying around my face, then that's horrible.
Like the butterfly aquarium or whatever they're called, you know?
Yes,
exactly.
atrium or
we went to
that.
one in Mexico thinking that it was gonna be like, oh, this is great, and I didn't even know if I knew, but Allison's like, can we get out of here? This is awful. Like, I hate every second of this.
Or she's just punching every butterfly and moth she can find. Yeah, so Derek, I mean, your fear of snakes seems a little bit more rational than moths. Sorry, Allison. I'm gonna, if I'm pitting those two against each other, I think the snake wins every time.
Yeah. I like snakes. I would have one as a pet.
Oh, awesome. Well, we'll wrap up there real quick. Where can people find you? We know TikTok, but plug website, social media, all that. Where can people find you guys?
PolygonMarket.com. That's the quickest way to find us. Allison is at Polygon Market on TikTok, at Polygon Market on Instagram, and on Facebook. Did I miss any? I think that's it.
No, I think that's it.
The typical places.
And as usual, we'll have those all up on the video, and you guys can, and in the notes, so you guys can log on and get a hold of Derek and Allison anytime.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for being on. Very excited for our next episode. Real quick disclaimer, nothing we say here can be taken as tax, legal, or financial advice. So if anything did sound interesting, please contact a professional. Contact Derek or Allison, or someone in your circle, and get advice before making a decision. Thank you so much for being on, guys, and very excited for the next episode.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Awesome, guys.